Well, we're still screwing around with the narrow gauge convention.
Right.
Sort of fun. We've got a lot of shows. We shot up a whole bunch of stuff while we were there.
With the camera.
With the camera, yeah, we didn't actually use a gun.
Outlaw, gosh.
You may notice too that we're in new wheels. The convertible. It's sad. It's sad. It just died. Is what it did. It just and died.
Yeah.
So we just traded it in on this. That's the first car I've ever driven all the way from factory brand new to junkyard dead.
Wow.
Took me 20 years to do it.
Hey, there you go.
But that's it's a one owner straight from the factory to the junkyard.
Wow.
Kind of sad.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're in the new wheels, and this week we're going to be riding the Georgetown Loop,
Nice.
which is such a fun railroad. It's been a scenic railroad in Colorado for a long time. It's got a little space in the middle where it was missing for some years, and then they rebuilt it. But it was a really popular tourist attraction back in the 1800s, and as it happens in the 1900s and now in the 2000s too.
Oh, wow.
So check this out, the Georgetown Loop. The Georgetown Loop Railroad is just up Clear Creek Canyon from the Colorado Railroad Museum there in Golden, Colorado. The line was built in 1881 by the Union Pacific Railroad, operating under the name Georgetown, Breckenridge, and Leadville Railroad. The line was built because of the gold and silver mines up Clear Creek Canyon, but right away it became a big hit with tourists. Everybody in Denver wanted to come up into the mountains, and so they rode the little train here up to Silver Plume and Georgetown. The line closed down in 1938, but in the 1970s they started rebuilding it with this great little museum and facility here. On the day we visited, they were running a West Side Lumber Company Shay here, number 9. They have several really cool steam locomotives. Unfortunately, none of them are from the original railroad, the Colorado and Southern. The railroad was offering discounted tickets to anyone attending the narrow gauge convention, so of course Karen and I had to come up and take advantage of that. Only 2 miles of the original railroad has been rebuilt, the line from Georgetown to Silver Plume, but that's the original Georgetown Loop, which included the Devil's Gate Viaduct right in the middle of a huge steel bridge that formed the loop.
Well, this looks just like the Shay that we rode behind at the Roaring Camp and Big Trees Railroad.
Yeah, they're very similar 3-truck Shays, and they're off the same original railroad, the West Side Lumber Company.
Wow, and it also looks much like the one we have sitting on the coffee table in the living room.
Well, as a matter of fact, yeah.
It is! That's cool.
And I think we'll paint that one West Side, too.
All right, cool.
Or we could paint it for Roaring Camp.
There we go.
Unfortunately, the original bridge was torn down for scrap in the 1930s, and it had to be completely rebuilt. It's all modern construction now. It's been designed to look exactly like the original bridge, which was a sort of flimsy affair. The current bridge is very modern and very structurally sound. Notice that these are all passenger trains. It's almost impossible to find a photograph of the Georgetown Loop with a freight train on it, because even back in the day it was most successful as a tourist line, as a scenic railroad. Both Denver natives and visitors to Denver loved to make a day trip and come up and ride over the Georgetown Loop.
Well, I can see why people come up here. The scenery is really spectacular. It's a little hard to see all of it because of the smoke from the recent fires, but still beautiful.
The Reconstructed Bridge was built by the Army Corps of Engineers and paid for by the Batchelor Foundation. The original legs of the bridge were formed by bolting together 4 curved pieces of metal to form a tube. These are actually tubes with fins welded onto them to make them look like the original legs, complete with simulated rivets.
Riding across here can feel a little bit intimidating, especially if you look over the side and it's like 100 feet below. Wow.
The Colorado and Southern narrow gauge lines were formed by merging 2 narrow gauge railroads, the Colorado Central and the Denver, South Park, and Pacific Railroads. 5 of their locomotives survive. Number 60 here is on display in Idaho Springs, just down canyon from the Georgetown Loop. 1 is on display in Breckenridge, Colorado, and 2 are in the collection at the Colorado Railroad Museum in Golden. The engines running on the current Georgetown Loop Railroad have all been brought here from other railroads. Unfortunately, there are no currently operating CNS narrow gauge locomotives. Now, with any luck, that will be changing soon. This is Colorado and Southern number 71, and it was operating a few years ago at Central City, Colorado, on a small amount of track which had been laid by some people in an attempt to put together a short scenic railroad. Unfortunately, this line no longer exists. Gambling was legalized in Central City and Blackhawk, and, well, it's completely changed the nature of these fun little towns. These tracks were all torn up. 71 no longer operates, and it was put on public display there in Central City, I believe outside one of the casinos. A volunteer group has been put together, and they're going to attempt to get 71 operating again. Not sure exactly what their plans are in terms of trackage. Would be fun to see it on the Georgetown Loop, but I sort of suspect they would want to lay their own track somewhere here in Central City. Fortunately, I just happened to be there while they were running 71 back in the 1990s and was able to grab this fun video. It's a really great little consolidation, and it'll be wonderful to see this thing operating again. The Clear Creek Canyon line was just one of 4 narrow gauge main lines operated by the Colorado and Southern. Another was the main line left over from the Denver, South Park, and Pacific to Como, Colorado, where there's a beautiful little surviving roundhouse, and there's another volunteer group there rebuilding that roundhouse, and they have acquired a steam engine. Again, it's not a CNS steam engine, but hey, it's a steam engine. As part of the narrow gauge convention, we visited the Como Roundhouse and got to see their cool new steam engine, and that will be part of this series on the Denver Narrow Gauge Convention, so look for that. It's really cool. Back in the early days, at the top of the line at Silver Plume, There was another railroad that met this one. It was built entirely as a scenic line that simply climbed to the top of one of the mountains called the Argentine Central. And it sawed back and forth on switchbacks with shays all the way to the summit of the mountain. Somewhat similar in concept to the Pikes Peak Railroad that we just looked at. In this particular case, however, there was no cogwheel train. They simply ran very small shays up a series of switchbacks all the way to the top of the mountain. It was referred to as the Stairway to the Stars, and they really meant it. It's not unlike going to the top of Pikes Peak. You can still find that grade, and if you're into hiking old, very, very steep railroad grades up incredibly tall mountains, you might want to give the Argentine Central a try. They've actually got some really cool old freight equipment here. I'm not quite sure where that's come from and how it ended up here, but it's almost like visiting a narrow gauge museum. There's really some neat stuff here. Well, there you go. That was the Georgetown Loop, part of the Denver Narrow Gauge Convention. Mm-hmm. And the Georgetown Loop is so much fun.
Oh, I'll say it is.
Gosh,
Wow.
so cool that they were able to rebuild that.
Right.
Bring it back to life. A popular tourist attraction now reborn.
Nice.
Well, if you haven't been over to the channel, then you want to go over to the channel. Now, before you go over to the channel, call in sick. Because you're going to want to spend a couple of days over there binge watching the 220 or whatever it is movies because they're so good.
I did that and I'm still here.
Yeah.
I called in permanently sick.
Permanently sick.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I was tired yesterday. I'm still tired today. You know what that means? I'm retired. Brum pum. So we both retired.
Yes.
And now we're here screwing around permanently. So if you're not old enough to retire, then at least call in sick and spend some time screwing around with us over at the channel. Now, if you're not a subscriber to the channel, there's an easy fix. You click on the blue button, which is about to magically appear. Zoink! Right in here, see that blue button? If you don't see it, it's because it's not supported on your device. Just go over to the channel and subscribe that way. Well, we're not sure how you found this movie on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring. And we will see you here again in a couple of days with some more massive and significant screwing around. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.